Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to 12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast, season number 2, episode 42. Today's guest we have is Jesi. She's from the Pennsylvania or just outside of Pittsburgh area. She just mentioned about an hour outside of that. I think we've been following each other, give or take, I would say just shy of a month. And let me tell you, she has amazing content. She also has a podcast or a show that she does live on Instagram on Saturday nights called the Saturday Night Shit Show. Yes, that is the title. And I love the title, may I add. And we'll definitely find out the meaning behind that, as well as she has a couple other things going on. I will ask her those questions in just a second. But before we go ahead and get into the interview, you guys can log on to 12facesofsober.com. You can get a signed copy of my book, 12 Faces of Sober, as well as you can get merchandise like t-shirts, hoodies. I have tights for women, workout shorts or bike shorts for women, coffee mugs, etc. Like I said, 12 Faces of Sober. Click on the merchandise tab. You can get that, as well as you can get a signed copy of my book, 12 Faces Sober. That's $20 on my website, or you could purchase a non-signed copy of 12 Faces of Sober on Amazon, which actually became a bestseller February 22nd of 2022. I was number 1 in 3 different categories for 48 hours on Amazon. So, you know, that was definitely the highlight of my day, because before I found out about that, I got some bad news. So this made everything much better. But that's the luxury of sobriety, is that despite maybe having a bad moment, something good may come right behind it as well. So what else we got going on? I also have my children's book about my baseball playing days as a kid. That's completed. I just need to get in contact with the publishing company to do that. And I'm still working on my Army book, or the complete 6 years of my Army book. That will be, I'm giving myself to June 1st to complete both of those and hopefully have them out by 4th of July, if not roughly around my birthday in August, which I think is the 2nd, and it falls on a Tuesday. So I might do like I did with 12 Faces of Sober and drop both books on my birthday. But we'll, stay tuned to that, and I'll definitely keep you guys posted. But enough of me talking. Like I said, welcome Jesi, the 12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast. You can go ahead and, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit, where you're from. When did you, start experimenting with drugs and alcohol? And we'll jump in from there. Welcome to 12 Faces of Sober.
Sounds great. Hi, I'm Jesi. First, I want to say congratulations on your book. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Congratulations. That's the gifts of recovery kind of handing out. So congratulations on that. I'm Jesi. I'm 36. I live outside of Pittsburgh. Been sober for just over, today marks 521 days. So I've got that going. It's my longest term of sobriety ever in life, ever. Started using very, very young. And I wouldn't necessarily call it experimenting either, because I just sort of dove right in with without looking, just put my hands in front, was like, here I go, this feels good. I kind of have a long-standing joke where I say that, whenever it comes to addiction and alcoholism, you're never going to meet an addict that's in recovery, or not in recovery, that's still in active addiction, that's going to raise their hand at a meeting and say, well, drugs didn't feel good. I didn't like them. They didn't feel good. We're all sort of sitting around because they did feel great, because what they offered us was a lot better than what we were walking around feeling like on our own. Like I said, I started off really young. My use directly ties into long-standing childhood trauma. My first memories are traumatic ones. They're not good, happy memories. And I've tried my best to sort of accept that for what it is, and then as I heal, as I recover, make new attempts at forming good memories with those same people. So I was taken away from my mom when I was 3 by my narcissistic dad, and he just like, I mean, when I say he took off, like he wrote like a Dear John letter and like put it in a laundry basket with some clothes, dumped it off at the Holiday Inn, and was like, gave her a call at work, like, hey, so we're gone, and the house is gone, and all the furniture's gone.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So my first memory of my mom, because I was like 3, so I don't have, really memories of being with her. My first memory of her was being at my grandparents' house, and like they had a finished basement. And so my dad was like, guys, get in the basement. You're going to go down. We're all going to sit in the basement. It was like a TV room, which like doubled as his bedroom. And so we're sitting down there, and my mom drove all the way up from Maryland, which is where she was still living at, to come see us and to bring us Christmas presents.
Oh, wow.
And she walked down the stairs to come, into the basement. And my dad got up and he like stopped her right at the doorway. Told her, she could give the gifts to him and he would hand them to us. We weren't allowed to give her a hug. We weren't allowed to give her a kiss. We weren't even allowed to touch her. She was not allowed to touch us. And the entire interaction took about 6 minutes. And she was told she had to leave.
No,
so
now was that, not to cut you off, was that because she had something going on, or your father just did not want you guys to deal with your mom?
No, so my mom's worked, at the time. Did she have something going on? The only thing that she really had going on at that time, and as I became an adult, I asked these questions like, hey, I'm an adult and I'm trying to get sober and I'm trying to get better. So like I need some definite real answers, some truthful answers on how this whole thing went down and kind of why it went down. My dad had an affair. And he was in the service, so we moved around a lot, and we lived, I was born in England.
Okay.
And we didn't move stateside until I was, a little bit over 3. Well, he had an affair and they decided, they were going to get back together. I guess the whole thing kind of really ate my mom up. And he took off after she went out with a few friends of hers from work. They had like a girls' night. And she admitted to having an affair. She had like a one-night stand. And she came home and she told him about it. And that was it. He packed everybody up and he left.
Wow.
And, he's done a lot of healing now. And he can say that, he's made apologies. And he's tried to make amends for what's happened. He's absolutely admitted to the fact that, he knows that it sort of paved the way for my siblings and I to have a very, very sort of screwed up view on what the world was and how it worked and how we treated people. It was sort of, he's a different man now, and I'm grateful for that every day. But we're talking over 30 years ago. I mean, he was an SOB. He really was. He was high and mighty and holier than thou, and it was his way and everything was right. It was pretty terrible.
What branch of service was your dad in?
Air Force.
Okay. My dad was in the Navy, so when you described that, I that was my dad in the 80s. So
right?
Yeah, trust me, I remember that for sure. Wow.
Yeah, it's sort of having a parent in the service in the 80s was definitely like they're their own breed, I swear.
Yeah, most definitely. I guess I was glad that I joined in almost in the 2010s I joined, but wow, it was a different animal. I mean, the pay was low and they acted as if they had all the money in the world, but they weren't getting nothing. But they still lived a very wild a wild life,
Right. and that, to touch on that specifically, it floored me. Like, growing up, I thought my dad had, obviously I thought he had money. Like, he acted like he had money. And we lived with my grandparents growing up. And I always thought, for me, I always thought that, it was for like stability, just to give the kids one home and not to be bouncing around and moving all over the place. And I'll never forget it. I was probably like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8. And we go to the grocery store. And it was something we always did. Like, after church on Sundays, my grandparents were very, very religious. So we went every single Sunday, and we're at the grocery store, and my dad pulls out, food stamps. And we're talking food stamps back in the day when they weren't on a card, when they were
on the book. Yeah.
It was like a little booklet that you got. And there I am at the register, just kind of staring at him like, what are those? Like, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
And he looked down at me and he was like, oh, we're not rich, Jessica. And I was like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Well, that's news to me. And it was like the area where we lived in, it wasn't so much affluent, but for the area it was. We lived in a super small town, and it was called Chapel Downs. It was like this little subdivision, and getting on the bus for school, everybody used to make fun of us because we were the rich kids, and we lived in a nice neighborhood, and we didn't know what it was like to live across the tracks. And over here I'm like, well, my shoes have been talking for like 6 months. Does that not count? Like,
yeah, that's what
like, where's this money we're talking about? Where's
that at? Listen, I second that, because my friends to this day, they think that my family had money because I grew up in a 2-parent home. And I'm like, nah, you know what I'm saying? Like, we lived in one of the worst parts of San Diego. I'm like, there was nothing glamorous about where we lived. But okay, if you want to believe that, I'll let you have it. Yeah, so I know. That's crazy.
Right? When I was like, so, and that went on we lived at my grandparents off and on until I was like 12. When I was 7, my dad, and we're talking, serviceman in the 80s. So he was very abusive, mentally, emotionally, physically. And that's just how things worked, right? Back then, we're talking the, late 80s, early 90s, things were different. And when a kid went to school with bruises all over them, there wasn't this, whole up in arms about calling Child Protective Services. It was more of a like, hey, what'd you do?
Yeah, you fail. You fail, and that'll be it probably. Yeah.
And that was it. My mom fought for us. She really, really did, even though, fighting for us meant that she wasn't able to see us. He would get angry and he would stop visits. And, that was my first introduction to legal corruption. My uncle, was a pretty high-powered attorney in Pittsburgh. He owned his own firm. And you would think like a huge conflict of interest with him representing his brother, but it happened that way for a number of years. He was able to get custody, child support, she didn't have anything. I witnessed him literally, he showed up to pick us up after a visit, and he's drunker than a skunk, and he hits her in the middle of the street, because she didn't want us to get in the car with him because he was drunk. And whenever she took him to court, it actually ended up coming down to, listen, if you want to see your kids again, you're going to drop these charges and you're not going to say another word about it. It never happened. Do you want to see your kids, Trish? Do you want to see your kids?
That won't fly today. That won't fly today.
Wow. No, hell no, it wouldn't. She finally, did enough documenting and her own private investigative work, that she got them to make a note in his case in the court system that he needed to be watched for signs of child abuse. And at that point in time was when he made the decision that, not that him taking us away from her when we were younger didn't affect us, it did. But then he made the decision that really changed our lives for forever, forever. He found this woman, her name is Linda. Linda had lost custody of her kids for sexual deviation, which if nobody knows what that is, she was having sex with her own kids. She lost custody of those kids and she met my dad. And my dad helped her get, number one, he helped her get those kids back. He helped her regain custody. And then once she had regained custody, he packed us all up in the middle of the, like in the middle of the night.
Wow.
And moved us to Oklahoma with this woman and her kids. And that was like that one moment. We talk about, I'm a peer counselor and an advocate, and I help people deal with things like this now. And we talk about things like core trauma and, how we can usually trace kind of everything that followed down to like this one thing, right? This one thing. And that was that thing. That was that one thing that shifted everything. Linda was abusive. She was abusive mentally, emotionally, physically, sexually. Her children, because they were so screwed up in their own heads, abused my brother and I like as a set, right? They built this huge tent fort in the garage. I mean, this thing was huge. It was massive, right? And here I am, I'm 7, and I've never been, I've been abused, but not in that way. And they're like, hey, you and your brother, like, come play in this tent. We built this for you guys. Welcome home. Like, oh, shit, cool. This is awesome. And I went in that thing for the first time, and it took probably not even 2 minutes before I was being sexually assaulted. And my brother was given orders to kind of watch this. And if you close your eyes, we're going to beat the shit out of you. Don't close your eyes. To this day, my dad, he will hold on to the fact that, oh, if I only knew what was happening. Bull, BS. I understand he was working a lot, he was busy, etc. But when your kids have changes like that, it would take somebody with anybody with 2 brain cells could put together the pieces of like, hey, why do my kids keep disappearing into the garage, into this fort for hours? And why are my kids changing? What's going on with them? What's happening to them? And it ended up being the like that one event that kind of shaped and molded everything that came after. Absolutely everything. We came back, and it wasn't like, my dad wasn't a hero in this. Like, he didn't leave this woman because his kids were being hurt. He did not leave this woman because he suspected that something was amiss. He left this woman because she cheated. Had she not had there with a different airman, they probably would have still, he probably would have stayed. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yeah.
And what it sounds like is your dad was able to do the cheating, but just don't like the cheating to be done on him. That's my take from what you're sharing. Wow, that
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you continue, but I definitely want to apologize, because no person, male or female, should have to go through that. And for you to come on and trust me by sharing it is bigger, much, kudos to you for that, because that takes a lot, you know what I'm saying? And I could just imagine what you were going through during that time, and then to now be functional, because that right there, I don't know how I would feel as a person today and how I go about my living. But I commend you and salute you, because you're in good spirits, have a smile on your face, and you're able to share it. So most definitely. But go ahead, keep going.
No. And thank you for that. It's I've only become this way because of recovery. Like, I always say that there's a difference between sobriety in recovery, because anybody can, you can stop drinking, you can stop using, but are you going to recover? And, recovery really means doing that really hard work and being able to look back at situations that really hurt you, that, changed you as a person. And, now I look at that time as, what, that sucks. That sucks. It's shitty that it happened. It's shitty that it continued to happen. However, it's not me. It's just something that happened to me. It's just another thing that happened.
Dang. So now, as all this was going on, and you said your father had walked away, when did you start to, you said not experiment, you was full-fledged. So how did that transition? Was it more or less of the moving, or it was like, okay, brakes have been pumped, now I got time to think about it and process, and now it's time for me to just run wild and do whatever it is I need to do to cope with whatever trauma that you face?
It was a mix of everything. We moved and we got back up to PA, I guess it was shortly before my 9th birthday. And I started, when I was 10, that was the time I hit my first joint, had my first drink. By 12, and from like 10 to 12, it still wasn't experimenting because I was doing it often enough. Unfortunately, it seems like the messed up kids always seem to like find each other. And that's exactly what happened in school. I made friends with, girls that were going through the same type of shit. Their home lives were terrible. And usually that equated to, we could have sleepovers and somebody's parents weren't paying attention, normally happen that way. And it was sort of like, hey, what can we get into? What looks good? What feels good? And, I was 12. By the time I turned 12, by my 12th birthday, I was a functional alcoholic. I was functioning and I was an alcoholic at 12. I used to take vodka in a water bottle to school because I would get the shakes. I would have the shakes so bad that I couldn't hold my pencil. I couldn't focus in class. I couldn't do anything.
And none of your teachers question you, like, you don't, you know what I'm saying? Why they say that, you're not, you can't smell vodka, but I don't know. I don't believe that now, because I could any type of alcohol, I could smell it. So you telling me the teachers didn't notice this?
No, I think they noticed. But I hold myself very accountable for the things that I've done. I was a master manipulator, and I could spin anything.
Okay.
If it was female, I knew, if the person was female, I knew that I could, always bring up something from my past that would cause like a, oh, I'm so sorry, On the flip side, I knew that, especially with male teachers, that my looks would get me pretty much anything that I wanted. And so I learned very, very young that I was going to be able to do certain things. And I hung on to that forever. Like, it wasn't, I'm 36 now, been sober for almost a year and a half. And, at this point in my life, this is the very first time in my entire life that I've, been able to look at myself in the mirror and I accept that, like, oh, hey, I'm a beautiful person, but hey, that's not who I am either. I'm Jess, and my looks are just like, that's just my physical appearance. I don't need to lean on them or use them as a crutch or a vice or anything else. And you would think that I wouldn't have gotten that way, especially because my looks always seem to bring me, like, they caused me pain. They caused me immense pain. No matter who it was, like even boyfriends in junior high and high school, they were never, they never treated me decent or anything like that. But that was also because, I learned from watching my broken mom and my broken dad navigate their way through life. And between the two of them, we've got like 15 marriages to do to different people.
Wait, you said
And
between the two of them? Holy
so they themselves, like my mom and my dad, they got pregnant with my brother and got married.
Mhm.
And then I was planned. They had me, and then they got divorced.
Mm.
And then they found out that they were pregnant with like my younger sister.
Mm.
And then they got married.
Oh my goodness. Again.
And then they got divorced.
Okay.
And my mom often makes the joke that the day that she signed the divorce papers with my dad for that final divorce, he actually, I guess, looked at her and was like, "Hey, you want to try again?"
Wow. That is interesting. That is interesting right there. Wow.
That was the narcissist in him, kind of like, "Hey, I took your kids. I left you with nothing, but like, what's up? You look good." I can just see it in my head.
That's interesting. Yeah. Nah. I'll say this, when I signed my divorce papers, nah, that was it. I was not trying to. There was no way. No. Good thing about it too, she didn't show up at court, so that made it even easier. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, she didn't come to. I filed for divorce in Minnesota, and she was in Arizona, so she didn't show up. I was nervous though, but I was glad that she didn't, because everything was in my favor after that. So at court. So.
Oh, well, that's good. Yeah, my first divorce, I've been divorced twice now. My first divorce and marriage was like listen, it was a shotgun wedding if there ever was one. I lived in Southern Illinois, it's just culturally different. It's still to this day, it is culturally different. And when I got pregnant at 17, it was just kind of expected. Like it was kind of like what needed to happen was, okay, well now we're gonna get married and live on a farm and like have a bunch of kids.
Oh my.
And we'll get right in. And it didn't work out that way. Then I was single for quite some time, ended up meeting somebody else, got engaged. That fell apart. And then I made my way back home to Pennsylvania, got myself into a really shitty situation where I was being trafficked. And I met this guy who he rescued me. He rescued me from that situation. And so I felt a loyalty to him and an obligation. And, naturally, he was the love of my life. I've never met anybody that treated me the way that he did. And I was never going to find that ever again. And the way he treated me was awful.
Y'all about to say, at least that's what you thought. At least that's what you thought. Wow. Now this is a first on my podcast, what you're sharing. So yes, thank you. You're coming with some really good information. That's why I told you yesterday, I said, this is going to be an interesting conversation. Most definitely. But keep going. Yes, I'm loving this.
Absolutely. I always look forward to it because I'm very open.
Okay.
I'm very, very open. It kind of happened by happy accident. The very first podcast I ever did, I was, speaking, and I ended up saying this secrets don't save lives. I said mine, yours, anybody's. And he ended up going on to name the entire episode that, and it just kind of followed me after that. And I really got to a place where I'm like, if I'm going to do this, if I'm really going to do this, if I'm going to put myself out there, I'm going to put myself out there. Because chances are the way that, and I know this to be true, I don't care what anybody else says, right now in the world, somewhere out there, there's a mom and she's all strung out and she's getting her ass beat. you know, and she's selling herself to try and get through the day. And she's going to shoot up tonight, and she's going to pray to God that she doesn't ever wake back up. And then she's going to wake up tomorrow and she's going to be sick, and the cycle is going to start all over again.
Right.
And I know that because that was me.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I will keep sharing, and I will keep, I will keep being vulnerable so that, when that one person finds your podcast at 3:00 in the morning, because, they just can't hold on anymore. Life's not going to get any better. This is the best it's ever going to get. They can see my face and know that I felt that exact same way.
And
exact same way.
And truthfully, that's the primary reason as to why I did the podcast, because, I've said it on on other episodes, that I can get up here and spend an hour in a total of 41 episodes that I've done and just talk about my life. But instead, I'd rather hear somebody else's and then tie it in, and how, what are some similarities that you're sharing that's that may have happened in my life. Like you mentioned 12. That's where 12 Faces of Sober came from. That's when very first time I got drunk. So it's like, when you say that, it's like, okay, it seems to be a pattern. And you're not the only one that shared with me that they started, or full-fledged around that age, and just like you said. But for me, the alcohol was right there in my house. My dad was an alcoholic. So it was there. And, he traveled around the world, I'm sure, just like your dad did. So he came back with all different kinds of alcohol. So guess who was the first one to try it? Me. So that's where it stemmed from. Now, how did you get out of that situation? How, like, what was it? You said you're hoping that someone now, in the middle of the night or something, is watching it. What was it? What did it take for you to get out of that bad situation?
So that was it was a process.
Okay.
First, like, it wasn't, I was very selfish in the very last years of my addiction and the very last years of my abusive marriage. I was selfish. And that, circled around to, I would call my mom from out of state and cry about how I was going to kill myself. I didn't know why anybody wouldn't save me, because I needed someone to save me. And, my kids, I needed, it was all about me. Right. And there were times where I even let it go as far to, she had heard me get assaulted over the phone.
Ooh.
And she would call the cops, and they would come, and I would lie. And say that everything was fine, and she was crazy, and she was making it up that things were fine. But it took, I was in that situation for over 11 years. And, I really got to the place where, I thought that was the best it was ever going to get. Life was never going to get better than that. And so I was going to stay an addict because it was the only way that I could cope. Or even it was the only way I could wake up in the morning and not want to die immediately. He was, not only was he physically and mentally abusive, he was sexually abusive, and he was a serial cheater. And that shit was every day. It was a different woman every day. Wow. He would get in these crazy, affairs where he was telling women he loved them. My favorite one, though, is finding out that he was telling women that he was a single parent, and that his wife was some strung out junkie who had abandoned him and the kids, and like the whole time we're living under the same roof.
Oh my.
And I'm paying bills. Like, it was good. But I eventually realized that if I was gonna get away and stay away, because I had tried leaving several times, like most abuse victims do. They say it's between 7 to 14 times that a victim will leave their abuser before they leave for good. And I was no different. It took me 11. But that 11th time, I realized that, if I was going to leave him and I was going to stay gone, that I had to do different. I had to do something. And that, the catalyst for all of that, it honestly ended up being my oldest is almost 19. He's extremely talented. He's a musician.
Mhm.
And he wrote, produced, and then performed the song that ironically enough is called Save Me,
Mm.
where he talks very openly about his addict mother
Mm.
and his abusive stepfather.
Oh my.
And then when it went public, I went on a bender for 3 weeks. And it wasn't because I knew, people now knew what I was. That had nothing to do with it. People knew I was a junkie for a long time. My ex used to go out into the middle of the street and yell it, like, hey, my wife's a junkie whore. You want to buy her?
Oh my.
So
I don't mean to laugh. Damn, that's a bold statement right
no,
there.
it was. And so it wasn't that people knew. It was that I knew for the first time that I fucked my kids up,
Mm.
right? That sort of brick in the face. Oh my God. I became everything that I never wanted to be. I'm my parents. I wasn't going to do that. I wasn't, I watched my mom in an abusive marriage for over 10 years, then go from guy to guy. My dad was an abuser. I was never going to be them.
Mm.
I was going to be better. I was going to be better. And then I realized, that's me. I turned into all of that and I've hurt my kids, really, really hurt my kids. So much so that my oldest now had to make a song to talk about how hurt he is,
Mm.
right? With the tagline being, everybody's got to heal somehow.
Mm. Wow.
So I went on a bender for 3 weeks and then it happened. And I was like, I'm getting sober.
Mm.
Okay, I'm getting sober. So I called around, found myself a bedded detox. My clean date is November 6th of 2020. Was set up to go to detox and rehab on the 9th. And so November 9th comes and it's 7:30 in the morning. And I walk down the stairs and I find my ex-husband. And I said, hey, I'm gonna try and get ready because I'm 3 days in withdrawal at this point. I'm like, I'm gonna try and shower, but like I don't know how that's gonna work. I'm gonna get some shit together and then I want to be out of the house by like 8:30.
Mm.
I don't want to be late. I don't want to lose my bed. I really want this to work out. And he looked right at me, dead in the face, and he goes, I'm not taking you anywhere.
Mm. So that lets you know he ain't not in favor and support of that.
Nope. And I was like, and it just, I lost it. I lost it to the point that was I tried to kill myself right there, right then.
Mm.
And his response to me trying to kill myself was he picked me up by my neck, by my throat, and he put me through a built-in china cabinet that we had in our house. It was actually built into the wall.
Mm.
And threw me through the top of that and then slid me down, through the wood and through the glass.
Oh my goodness.
And he looks down at me and he goes, you don't get to leave. You don't get to die until I say you can. I'm not done with you yet.
Damn, that's brutal. That is brutal right there.
And it actually ended up being, and I say an act of God, literally, that I was as hurt as I was because, there was no choice. 911 had to be called. Had to be called. I lived in a super small town at that point, and his family was, tied in with the fire department, EMS, law enforcement. So he drags me out on the porch and he's kneeling on my face when they get there, right? And they slap cuffs on me. So what? Like, Okay.
Mm.
They get me in the back of an ambulance, and a paramedic took a look at me. She just looked at me, and she looked at the one officer that was standing there, and she goes, "Get these cuffs off of her. Do you not know what's going on here?"
Mm.
And the officer was like, "No, I know this girl. I know this family. It happens all the time."
Mm.
She goes, "Oh, so then you realize she's getting her ass beat, right?"
Mm. Yeah, see.
So they take the cuffs off, and that paramedic gives me a choice. And she's like, "Well, you're really messed up." Like, I was hurt. I had no idea that there was like glass embedded in my hip. It was in my back. It was in my side. Because I had tried to kill myself. I had, slits on my arms, and I was in bad shape.
Mm.
And so I had to go to the trauma center in Pittsburgh. And from there, I told her, hey, I need some help. So they put me in a medical detox. After a few days in detox, I went and I stayed in inpatient psych for over 2 weeks, which was the best decision that I ever made.
Mm.
But after all that, even after the psych visit, I didn't have another option when I got out of there, like as to where I was going to go. I knew that I had to go back to that house, and I had to go back to him. My youngest son was there. And not only that, I literally had nowhere else to go. The shelters, when you live out in those rural areas, it's not, there might be a shelter. There might be a shelter. And so I was like, well, shit. I called my mom on the way home. I said, I need you to do me a favor. I said, every single day, I need you to talk to me every single day. Don't let me get lost here. Don't let me get stuck here. I know that I want to get out. I know that I need to do this. And it was awful. It was awful. For 6.5 months, he tried everything under the sun to get me to relapse. He was very careful not to be as physically abusive because Jess was sober now, right? So it was going to be different if the cops came. He couldn't blame it on me being all strung out. But he became, even more vile in other ways, emotionally, mentally, sexually. I mean, he really went for the gusto. Because in his mind, he's like, well, she's gonna leave me. She's finally done with my shit. She's gonna leave me. She's gonna take the kid. She's gonna leave. And that's exactly what I did. May 19th of 2021 at 11:17 in the morning, I saw my window of opportunity. I grabbed a bag. I threw some shit in it. I mean, by the time I got to the shelter, which was over an hour away from where I lived, I didn't even realize, I didn't pack underwear. I didn't get socks. The shoes I grabbed for my son were his old ones. They had a hole in the bottom of them. But I didn't care. I just grabbed what I could see, put it in this bag, and went. And I've been gone ever since. Stayed in shelter for over 6 weeks. My first podcast interview, no shit, was done from my bedroom at the shelter. Was the first time I got on air and was interviewed and decided that I was going to be open and really vulnerable about what I had been through. And, now we are, May 19th will be a year that I've been gone. I live on my own. I have a beautiful apartment. My oldest is an adult, so he doesn't live with me, but he's got a bedroom at my house. My youngest is 9. He's getting straight A's in school.
That's good.
I work as a peer counselor and as an advocate. I, funded my own organization that helps, men and women of violence and, facing problems with addiction and mental health, trauma, heal, get out. We offer advocacy services from anything to helping someone find residential treatment to, most recently helped a mom disappear from Colorado.
And I wanted to add to what you were saying, because like I said, I'm having flashbacks. myself, but I am a victim of domestic violence, and my ex-wife, she probably still blames me to this day, but she did assault me. But I was drunk, didn't put my hands on her, and I ended up getting cut with a mason jar that had moonshine in it. And she called the cops. Oh yeah, she called, like when I was staying in El Paso, Texas, I was stationed there. Like I don't know what was with her. Like it was like 911 was on speed dial. It was like every chance she got. But a lot of the times she would start the problems. There would be reasons why I would get drunk and go off. But this particular time, we had went to Arizona for her. I think it was her 40th birthday, and we drive from El Paso to Phoenix. That's 5.5 hours. And she decides, oh, you can stay at her parents' house. I'm gonna stay at her parents' house while she party. And now, mind you, I drove all the way from El Paso to Phoenix. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm leaving. So I got on the bus and went back to El Paso. And I think I took the keys and everything. And somehow, like I said, I was drunk, and somehow she was able to get in the house. But what ended up happening is I went out to my neighbor house and got the alcohol I left over there the night before, and started drinking it in the garage. And she came out there being nosy like she normally did, but this particular time she grabbed it. And so when she grabbed the mason jar, it slipped out of my hand, and then it like cut my leg. And so when you said about having glass in you, I had went to rehab. I had went to rehab August of 2014, and I told the doctor, the counselor, specialist, or whatever. I said, "Hey, there's something wrong with my leg. I don't know what this is in my leg, but there's something bothering." They said, "Let me take a look at it." They looked at it and was like, "Do you know that you got glass?" And at this point, the glass had been in my leg for at least like 3 weeks. And I was like, okay. So to this day now, because she works, I don't know, I haven't spoken with her, but I know that she works in the medical field, and she can't even work. Like she could do certain things in the medical field, but she can't do everything because of that arrest. And even though I dropped the charges, um, it stuck with her because she got arrested on government property. So, to anybody out there, don't play around on government property, because that stuff will stick with you, even though people drop the charges. So, but yeah, so I just wanted to add that, it's tough, even being a man and coming out and saying, hey, I'm a victim of domestic violence. But I mean, I was taught not to put my hands on a woman. So regardless of how angry I may have gotten, how drunk I may have been, I might have destroyed property, but I wouldn't put my hands on the body, because it just, I was arrested once or twice, but I didn't want that type of stuff, on me. But yeah, so now here we go. Now you mentioned you went to rehab. Now after this, now kind of bringing it all together to current day. Now, are you active in like AA or NA or anything like that, or is it more or less of all the other stuff that you have going on as far as your own personal brand?
No, so I actually I wear a dual pendant. Very rarely ever comes off. I'm active in AA and NA because the truth is that I was an alcoholic long before I was ever a heroin addict.
Okay.
And if I'm not careful, that that will creep up and get to me. But I have a home group. I have an amazing sponsor. I've worked my steps. I've even worked something called the Women's Way, which is written for women by women, and helps women that have really come through some difficult situations look at their steps differently. And I found that I got stuck on step one, right? Like admitting that we're powerless, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And that was because I had been powerless my whole life.
Wow.
I'd been powerless my whole life. And how was I supposed to, this was the only thing that I had. I didn't have anything. How am I supposed to be completely powerless and surrender? Like I couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Women's Way, working it that way, it challenged me to think of it differently. And that was kind of the only way that I was able to get through those steps without going backwards, because I really thought I was going to go backwards.
Mm.
But yeah, I do credit, everybody has something different that works for them. And so whenever I'm interacting with people, I don't care how someone recovers. Shit, if you do it by yourself, like, you see a therapist, great. If you go to AANA, great. If you don't and you read books, like whatever works for you, whatever works. You know, the fact is that our disease is going to kill us if we're not careful. If we get comfortable, if we get complacent, it will come back and bite us in the ass every single time.
Very true.
So I don't care what somebody does to, stay sober. That's just what works for me.
Yeah, and I second what you're saying, because I guess I experienced AA in 2008. This is, might as well say, 8 years before I got sober. And I didn't take it serious, obviously, because I drank for another 8 years. But the only thing that kept me was my sponsor. Every time I would get in trouble, I would leave Phoenix, go to Minnesota. She was right there. Because I've lived in Phoenix 3 different decades: 95, 05, and 2015. And yeah, seriously, I'm not lying to you. That was bad. It was some tough times. But the first time, obviously, I was in high school. The second two, that in 08, I got arrested. And in 2016, I damn near, like, my ex-wife called the police when she came home. When she came to the house and noticed the house was empty because I cleaned her out. I meant business. That was the only plus of me being drunk that day, is that I cleaned the house out a week before.
Right.
But now, how has the clean and sober community on social media helped you navigate, through your journey?
So I love that. First of all, I love that question. That's awesome. So I think that I honestly have to credit Instagram specifically, the sober community on Instagram specifically, for connecting me with some of the people that have been the most influential and beneficial and most supportive. And we're talking friends that turned, followers that turned into friends, that turned into family, that turned into those people that I can call at 3 o'clock in the morning, from 3 states away, and say, like, hey, some shit's going on. After I left my ex-husband, we went through a period where it was really dangerous, and I had a couple friends call me and they were like, listen, we'll make you disappear, just say the word, Jess, and we'll make it happen. I came to Instagram as sort of a way I was going to make like a living journal, so to speak, just to document my journey, to help keep me accountable. And that's all it was ever supposed to be. It was just supposed to be for me. And within the first 6 months, I had about 1,000 followers, and I was like, what's happening here? And these weren't like friends, these weren't family, these were strangers that were following my content and reading my posts and watching my videos and coming to my lives. And as that community started to grow, I honestly can't imagine that I would have come as far as I have without that. I'm back in NA and AA now, but it was, oh gosh, I was not even 5 months sober, And I came forward at my home meeting about being on a low dose maintenance medication for my opiate addiction, right? And now I came forth about it because I was struggling. I wanted to come off of it. I didn't want to be on it anymore. And the meeting that I was at, they asked me for my tag. In NA, you get the key tags. And they asked me for my tag. And then very publicly, told me that as long as I was on any form of maintenance medication, that I was not sober and that I was going to be at day 0 until I got my shit together.
Okay.
And it shattered me to my core. I thought that my recovery was a sham, that it didn't, maybe I wasn't really sober. Was I not sober because I felt sober? Shit, I was taking something every day that was, helping me not have a million cravings that, that were going to keep me in the house and keep a needle out of my fucking arm, which was all that mattered to me. And so I never thought I'd go back. I never thought I'd walk into another meeting. And, it was through the community on social media that I started back in with Zoom meetings. Okay. And then eventually I felt comfortable where I was like, you know what, I'm going to find another meeting by me. Maybe it's a new area, because I live like an hour away from where I used to live with my ex-husband. So, it's a new area, it's new people. Maybe it'll be better. And now, I have my favorite meeting is on Saturday. Saturdays at noon. It's like we call it the old timers meeting, right? It's a bunch of like 50 and 60-year-old men that get around and drink coffee. And I love that meeting so much because I can be myself at it. And there's not a bunch of gentlemen standing behind me trying to, 13th step around. But I love the community that, social media offers. I think it's one of a kind. I do. I've been on other apps, and I've actually deleted other apps because the environment was so toxic. And so, you'd have your supportive followers, but you'd go into the comments and, if somebody had 1,000 comments, 995 of them were negative. I just couldn't deal with that. I think it's amazing that a community like that exists.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. First, big shouts out to the sober community on Instagram. I have, I follow a few on Facebook, but it's kind of harder. I get what you're saying in terms of like certain comments, and that's why like I just don't really respond to the ones on Facebook, because some of them are like, okay, is this for the sober community or is it anti-sober community? And I'm not with that. It's like, you got people out here trying to really and truly make a change for the betterment of themselves and those around them. And there shouldn't be anybody trying to bring them down or get them going back out there to want to use or drink, So yeah, I second that. I feel that one right there. Now let me ask you, tell us about the Saturday night shit show. What's that all about? And I would love to be on there one day too. Thought I'd plug that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually just started. Okay. It's been about a month now. Okay. And so my other co-host, her name's Amber. She runs another page on Instagram. Okay. Her and I met, and we became friends pretty quick. And we often, we would make these backhanded comments, right? About like, maybe we should do something. Oh, maybe we should do something. And then she reached out to me and she was like, I've really been thinking about this. Like, I think that we should do a live, and I think that it should be, recurrent. I think it should be a show. And I called her and I said, that's crazy. I said, you're on my list of people to talk to this week. I have like, my planner and all the things I got to do. Mm-hmm. And one of those things was to reach out to Amber and talk to her about the possibility of a show. The one thing that Amber and I have in common is that we are we're very vulnerable and honest in a brutal way, but we have some pretty kick-ass sense of humors. And we're not afraid to talk about some really difficult things. We like to refer to it as toxic positivity, right? Recovery is great, being sober is great, right? But there comes a point where you can't really just sit there and go, if you change your mindset That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Recovery is beautiful. Life is beautiful. Everything's beautiful. There's a very real side to things, that isn't all sunshine and rainbows, right? It's I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning last night and had a relapse dream so bad that I woke up shaken, or the even clear side of, we both have older children that are struggling with addiction themselves. We talk about everything from our own addictions to how it's affected people in our lives, how it's affected our children, how our traumas, came into play in keeping us sick. We talk about everything from addiction to mental illness to recovery to, eating disorders, self-harm, domestic violence, sex work, trafficking, you name it, because we've lived it. And so it's sort of a no bullshit and very uncensored approach to very real things that people are sometimes too afraid to talk about.
And that's what I like. That I like about I sat in for a few on Saturday just to kind of get a feel of your show. And that's what it is. I mean, like I said, I think the more I'm having guests, the more expressive, I won't say graphic, we'll just say more expressive with, their past. And that's what it is. Because like I said, I created this for the simple fact that, there's someone out there that has a similar story. May not be to a T, but the stories are similar. Abuse, from a family, to, sexual assault, to physical assault, to, anything and everything, problems at school, and that's what it is, because we don't know. Like you said, you might wake up, like you said, at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're like, okay, well, I got a little battery life on my phone. Let me see what's on YouTube. And okay, I'm struggling with this. Maybe I'll be able to find a particular, podcast or something that's talking about that particular topic or that particular dream, or even how to cope with it, and that's what I definitely like about it. And so what are some activities now that you enjoy doing now that you're clean and sober?
Okay. Well, so funny story about that is that I actually, for like the first, I don't know, because I was still in abuse for the first 6.5 months. And then after that, I started really healing those parts of me. I actually called my therapist once, and we're talking this probably about, I don't know, 8 months ago. And I had a breakdown. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It was decently nice outside. And I'm like, I don't know how to be a person. And she's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know how to be a person. I don't have, what do I do? What do I do myself? Because you dedicate so much time and energy to being an addict that you realize once you get sober that, like, oh crap, I have free time. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? And so I am one of the people, I have to keep myself pretty busy. If I have downtime, it can be detrimental sometimes. Not in like a would completely throw my life away kind of way, but I've always been very open about my struggles with mental illness. I take meds. I'm in a pretty good place now, but it's real for me and it exists. And so downtime, my brain can really do a number on me. If if my mind has the free time and and I don't have anything else going on, or I don't have anything else that's holding my attention, I will let my own self and my own past be the attention grabber, and I can really, really do a number on my own self, right? I can tear myself apart in a million ways, and that's not ever going to be good for me. So I do keep myself busy, write a lot. I'm currently finishing up my book, and I'm looking forward to that, because kind of like you, it's actually funny you said that. Mine's supposed to be coming out right around my birthday, which is pretty awesome. I'm a freelance writer, so I do write for a few other organizations. I do a lot of volunteer work, not just for, the online community, but in my new community. I had a pretty amazing experience where a speaking event, I got to stand as equals with some heavy hitter lawmakers and like the governor, right? And the state's district attorney. And I got to rub elbows with these people as an equal, right? And whenever the event was over, I had this line of people that wanted to meet me. They wanted to shake my hand. And so now I try to, really put myself out there and try and be a voice for, other causes. Like, a lot of my time right now is dedicated to, I'm fighting Harrisburg, the capital of PA. I'm fighting Harrisburg. There's a law here in PA that mandates that all minor children, regardless of their situation, all minor children have to have the approval and signature and cooperation of both parents to have mental health treatment. When you're talking about someone like my younger son, whose dad was the abuser, how are they supposed to heal? How are they supposed to heal if that abuser, if that perpetrator, if that person, if that aggressor is sitting in the same room or has access to all of their documents and knows what they're saying? That's my, I've been putting a lot of time into that. Other than that, I'll be honest, I really enjoy being a freaking sober mom. So very much. I like making my kids laugh. I actually have my 9-year-old running around saying, well, yeah, I'm weird, Mom. I'm your kid. And I'm like, I know, right? Right?
And then
I just enjoy,
and now and I'm not trying to cut you off, because that's what's most important. And you actually you took the question I was going to ask, but you answered it, because I was going to ask, like, how is life today, knowing you don't need drugs and alcohol, but you just answered that for me. Now, before we conclude this, I got two things that I want to let you touch on. Tell us about Surviving Beauty and what services are offered.
So Surviving Beauty is, it's like my other child, I guess I could say. Surviving Beauty is a organization. I'm actually working through having it sanctioned as a nonprofit. That takes time. But it is an organization that offers any victim, male, female, youth, doesn't matter, the opportunity and the support to become a survivor. And the reason why I say victim and survivor instead of something like an addict and a recovery is because all of that actually goes into it. Women and men of domestic violence are 87.7% more likely to struggle with an addiction of some sort. A lot of times when you find someone who's struggling to really get sober and stay sober, there is something else going on behind the scenes. They're struggling in some way, whether it's with the childhood trauma that they've experienced, a mental illness that, is undiagnosed, or that they're self-medicating for because they haven't found the right sort of treatment. And so Surviving Beauty aids to help them recover, heal in whatever way they need. I'm a licensed peer counselor. We do offer one-on-one counseling services. Those are by appointment only. We run a support group that meets every Monday and Thursday over Zoom. We offer financial empowerment classes and a curriculum based around helping, victims of financial abuse, and not even just victims of financial abuse, but addicts in recovery, learn how to handle financial independence again. because, not just getting out of abuse, but even getting sober, there were some things that I forgot how to do, right? Because any money that I got went up my arm, or went, to a bar. So I had no idea how to be an adult. So we offer a curriculum and courses for that. We also offer advocacy services, which can be anything from legal aid, help with filing protection from abuse orders, divorce, custody, things like that. We also go all the way to, helping an addict find rehab or resident treatment, long-term and short-term. For victims of violence, we, offer help with relocation, exit and escape. I'll sit down with somebody, and I don't care if it takes me 4 hours, we'll get an escape and an exit plan, a safety plan, things like that. I think it's, the more we're on social media, and listen, I am never, ever going to be one to tell somebody not to go make money off their gifts, right? Like that's not me. I support everybody, but the one thing that drove me the most nuts was, everybody makes those real videos now, and, you see it all the time. Like, hey, join my support group for the low price of, or hey, do you want to heal? It's only going to cost you this much. It's important for people to know that there's another option. And even if that option isn't with me, if somebody wants in-person services, I'll help you find it. A lot of people don't know that, shelters will offer free counseling and advocacy services to victims in their area for free. And so I wanted to make sure that there was a place for people who felt like they couldn't afford treatment, or didn't know where they were going to get treatment, or didn't know what steps they were going to take. They know they want to get better, but they don't know how they're going to get there. And so Surviving B offers it to people. Because as I was trying to heal, and as I was trying to get sober and recover for, and get out of violence for the last, 11 and a half years, I didn't have that. And so I make it my mission to ensure that everyone does.
Okay. And last thing, I'm gonna get you to plug the website in just a second when you plug your IG. What's the best advice you can give someone early in sobriety or clean time that may be facing trauma that you have faced in the past?
The best advice that I could ever possibly give is just the very simple, just keep fighting. As cliche as that sounds, as simple as that sounds, especially when we're early in recovery and we have a lot of skeletons in our closet, and our trauma has brought us to places where we've done things that we never would have thought of. We've hurt people ourselves, or we became a different person altogether. And a lot of times it can get really, really hard to keep hanging on because there's so much darkness. And, how am I supposed to overcome this? How am I really supposed to heal from this? I used to ask myself that all the time. How am I supposed to do this? I can't forgive this person. I can't let go of what happened. Just keep fighting. Because as long as, it doesn't matter how, but just do it. When you wake up in the morning and you're thinking like, I can't do this another day, God, this feels terrible. No one said that getting sober was supposed to feel like that, because for someone who's got a lot of trauma, early sobriety doesn't feel great. Doesn't feel great at all. It actually hurts. It's very painful. It's confusing. It's scary, because you're never, we all wish like, hey, I remember the person I was before that. I want to be her. I want to be him. And then we find out that we're never going to be that person ever again. But the person we are going to be is going to be, wise beyond their years. A strength that Xena, warrior princess, and Hercules themselves couldn't, hold a candle to. That person, that best version, is coming. You just have to keep fighting for it.
You just gave me a flashback. I had a biggest crush on the black lady that was on Xena Warrior Princess. I remember that. I remember that show. Oh my goodness. Now, thank you for that. Now, where can people follow you? I mean, I know, but I'm gonna put it in there. But just in case, if those who might not want to read it, they might be able just to hear it, type it in, and put it, follow you on whatever platform you have, as well as drop your Surviving Beauty website as well. So, and I'll put both of those, the link to your Instagram as well as the link to your website.
Awesome. Oh, if anybody wants to follow me, you can find me on IG at authentically.jesi, Jesi. And the website for Surviving Beauty is live. It is up and running. You can find information on services as well as contact information. Really quick, if anybody is getting on there, the questionnaire for you to get started, it's going to ask you if you are in urgent need or if you are unsafe due to violence. If you select yes, that system will notify me immediately, and I will get in touch with you immediately. And that website is www.survivingbeauty.org.
Jesi, thank you so very much for coming on 12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast. You have truly made my day with the heartfelt information that you shared. I heard the passion with everything that you shared. It touched my heart because I've been through some of the things that you've shared. And I know I couldn't imagine myself going through it. So I can just imagine what it was that you went through and how you are a survivor and how you've been able to make it through. And that's the point of my podcast, is to get, have, wonderful people like yourself to come on here, share their story in hopes of reaching one and motivating others, because that's what we need in this sober community, sober and clean community. We need powerful people like yourself that is not afraid to just say, you know what, I'm going to talk my shit and I'm going to tell it just like it is. And that's the wonderful thing about this, is that, like I said, I'm very surprised. I know I said I look forward to the conversation, but I truly meant it, because like I said, I want to learn something about each person that I interview and take something, from the interview itself to make myself a better person so that I can convey a better message to others. So once again, thank you. But this concludes another wonderful episode of 12 Faces of Sober Speaks podcast. Once again, this is season number 2, episode 42. You can follow me on Instagram, 12 Faces of Sober. And like I said, I'm on Facebook as well, 12 Faces of Sober, Twitter, 12 Faces of Sober, TikTok, 12 Faces of Sober. I don't dance on TikTok, but I'm on there, So yeah, but once again, like I said, thank you for coming on, Jesi. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you're a very busy woman, and I appreciate it all the
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And like I said, thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. Until next time, this is 12 Faces of Sober.